Good morning, listener. Good morning, viewer. Now, pay attention. This is for you. I'm talking to you. We're going to be talking to Pat McGart in a minute, but I'm talking to you right now. Down below the screen where you're watching me, and in a moment, Pat, there's a little subscribe button. And I want you to hit that button. Hit it, hit it, hit it. And if possible, find about half a dozen friends to do the same thing. We are dependent on a belief that people are listening to what we're saying. Otherwise, we'd start to get very upset and go into a corner and cry. Isn't that right, Pat?
Absolutely. In fact, we can most weeks we get into the corner and cry, but we'll not go there.
That's that's after the show.
That's after the show. Hey,
Okay.
by the way, before we start anything, and it's not on part of our program. Last night I just saw it. Mark Carney
Ah,
has been elected the new Prime Minister of your old country, Canada.
yeah.
Funny thing about Mark Carney, uh, uh, he's an Irish citizen. I didn't know that. I don't
Well,
even know how you can become a prime minister of Canada and be an Irish citizen. But Carney, anyway, bottom line of it, he's taken over from Justin Trudeau,
mhm.
and apparently he'll be sworn in the next couple of days. The Liberal Party were way, way behind it, and don't even ask me the name of the leader of the Conservative Party, but they were way behind him because Trudeau had become quite unpopular.
Yeah.
Now, I think there has to be elections later this year, but since Carney's come in, the support for the Liberal Party's gone way, way up,
Mhm.
and so on. But anyway, last night in his speech, he really went for Donald Trump. He said they're trying to steal our water, our land, our resources. He says they're trying to make us the 51st state, and it's never going to happen. He says we will not sort of deal with a country we can no longer trust. Jude, isn't that some sort of statement from an incoming Prime Minister of Canada?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think, to be honest, I think it's a shrewd move on his part as well as being commendable view. Because if things aren't going well at home, it's a good idea to get an outside sort of crisis. Remember the Falklands and Maggie Thatcher? She got
Margaret
down the
Thatcher, she was
tubes
about to
and then
she was about to lose the election
yeah,
and
and
lose it quite
then
heavily. Yeah,
and then
yeah,
she got the Falklands and she boomed up again. So I think that might not do the Liberal Party and Mark Carney much harm. Besides, of course, you always get a boost. We saw that with Simon Harris when he took over
yeah.
from Leo in Fine Gael. I must say I always was impressed by him anytime I saw him when he was the governor of the Bank of England.
Yeah. He was
Regardless,
he was the first no, he was the first non-Brit to be
aye.
appointed governor of the Bank of England. Yeah,
Yeah, but always spoke in a very measured and thoughtful sort of way. Sort
yeah,
of the very opposite of Trump, when you think about
yeah,
it. The very
yeah,
opposite. It'll be interesting to see the two of them side by side. I'm sorry to see Trudeau going. We'll have to get Gabriel McCaffrey on to
yeah.
talk about it because I'm sad to see Trudeau go, and I think it's a pity they took against him. It's not that I believe in his policies, but he just seemed such a nice, good-looking guy, and he linked back to his father for me, which was
I,
the time when I
but
was young.
one disappointment for me, and I've got to be in me bonnet about what's going on in the Middle East because I think it's
Yeah,
despicable. But he's a Zionist, and like Jude, if you support Zionism, the
is
right
he?
of
Is
one
he
group
a
of people
Zionist?
to, yeah, apparently so.
Ah, you
That
shouldn't have told
and
me that,
Israel
Pat.
gets a Bible. Jude,
Mm.
I can't abide that because what I see is absolute might is right that they can blast the Gazans to bits and nobody. I know the complete of indifference of our political leaders to what's happening the Gazans and the Palestinians absolutely appalls me.
Yeah, I can't believe that Mark Carney would be a
Not
Zionist.
Mark Carney, just Justin Trudeau.
Oh, Justin Trudeau, is it? Oh, I see.
I
Yeah.
said,
What the
no,
hell?
I don't
Why
know.
would?
I presume McCartney will take the same role about the Israelis as most Canadians. There's a big Jewish population, isn't there, in
That
Canada?
is a pretty. We used to live next door to a Jewish woman, and I tell you, she was great fun. I enjoyed her a lot. But that was they weren't controversial days then. Uh, yeah, yeah. Oh, well, I'm sorry to hear that. You shouldn't have told me that Pat about
I
Justin
know.
Trudeau, because I had a sort of a
Yeah.
saint-like picture of him in my head. Now
Uh,
you've destroyed it.
he's a very reasonable man, and he's a very intelligent.
Yeah,
Remember one day they were asking something about semiconductors, and and I don't know how it was something to do with the internet and all that. And Trudeau actually started to explain technically how it worked. Can you imagine the village idiot in the White House trying to explain it? He doesn't even know how to probably plug in a computer, never mind explain how it works.
Okay, well, that brings us to the White House. And yeah, I gather Trump has declared March to be Irish month. Is that right?
Yeah, Irish American month. He says they voted for me in big numbers. They are great people.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
You know.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Micheal is getting advice in all the newspapers as to how he should conduct himself when he goes
Yeah.
there. How do you, he'll have about half an hour or more with Trump, they say. How would you advise him?
We had this discussion on Friday, Jim, but it's become much more
What's so pressing?
sort of what would you say, pressing, because it's this week, and
Yeah.
I think he should say nothing and smile at the cameras.
Do you? But well,
Uh,
you see, there's a case for that, and I remember some guy telling me once when I got involved in some controversy and was taking a buffeting. He said, "Yeah, I've got to pick your battles," and
yeah,
it's true. You do need to pick your battles. But on the other hand, there is such a thing as doing the right thing
oh
rather
yeah,
than just doing the diplomatic thing. And maybe the right thing to do is, I mean, what's on Micheal's head when he goes into the White House or into the Oval Office? It's Gaza, probably, and how he's going to talk about it or not talk
and
about it.
Ukraine, yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
wouldn't it be nice to see a politician going in and actually following what he believed was the right thing and say, look,
yeah,
we appreciate all the things you've done for Ireland. We want more of it. But on Gaza, we don't agree with you. We think it's a terrible thing, all those people dying. I mean, Trump talked
yeah.
about the terribleness of all the people dying as well. Do you not think that it would be a good idea for a politician to
I was
come
been
clean
a
for
bit
once?
flippant. If you answer to answer your question, and probably in a much more serious way, of course you should adopt the right position.
Hmm.
Jude, the moral position, we've had enough of people taking shortcuts morally and every other way. And that's how we ended up with Trump and Boris Johnson, all these people. Oh,
Hmm.
I know this, I keep hearing this. Let's live in the real world and all the rest. Jude, at one stage, we got people like Abraham Lincoln and George Washington. And even the old Brits, there were people who their word was their bond, and if they were
Hmm.
caught out lying to Parliament, they resigned or fell
Yeah.
on their sword type thing. Now, like Trump, he has lied, he's cheated, he's done everything, and after Zelensky, right, into the lion's den and goes Micheal Martin,
Hmm.
and Micheal may as well say, "Look, we totally disagree with what you're going to do or plan." The Riviera of the Middle East. Good
Hmm.
merciful Jesus, Jude. Have you ever heard anything more stupid or more insane? But the other side here, let's move on a wee bit. Trump, you see, the problem for our friend Micheal is that Trump is going to say Ireland has a massive trade imbalance with
Oh,
America.
yeah.
And he claims that any country that America has a trade imbalance with, that they are exploiting the good
Hmm.
old our
Hmm.
American people. They're exploiting them. Now, the fact that he ignores a whole lot
You
of other
froze.
factors, but let's go on it.
Say that
And
again,
Ireland
Pat,
is the
because you
fourth
froze for a
largest
second there.
trade
Say that
imbalance with
again.
America. And
Say that again, Pat, because you froze again.
Ireland is the fourth largest trade. I think Canada and Mexico, and I can't remember what the third one is.
Hmm.
Ireland is fourth in terms of
Yeah.
unbalances between trade. So he's going to look at Ireland and see if Michael opens his mouth. And the next thing, no Trump, he's probably going to go from, oh no, we need to talk about tariffs. Ireland's getting
Hmm.
the only
Hmm.
thing, Jude. I'll finish up on is on the basis that Trump said a lot of Irish people voted for him in the last election.
Hmm.
And by the way, I am not proud of that one iota.
Yeah, well, I suppose Trump might be saying, yeah, I better not be too hard on him. Otherwise, he mightn't, mightn't vote for me in my next term. Because people don't
I,
know, that Trump won't find reasons for staying on or
I for a
putting
third term.
JD Vance in and him being the vice president.
Yeah,
Anyway, I've mixed feelings. Yeah, I can see how you need to be diplomatic and not annoy him. On the other hand, there is such a thing as standing up when the time comes. But I tell you, in another way, the thing that strikes me is that the whole thing's a bit demeaning. It's a bit like you had Macron, you had Starmer, and now you have Micheal, and you think like it's boys going up to the dean's office or the
that's
dean's
exactly.
room.
But
And
Jude,
will
hold
he
on a
be in
second.
good form when you get there?
That is deliberate. That is deliberate. That's the message that he's the big chief.
And you say, "Oh God, will he be in good form? Oh, will I get away? Oh, it might give me an awful hiding." No, this is ridiculous, really, when you stop to
Yeah,
think of it. Uh, we,
yeah.
we- I know that you have to tread carefully, but the idea, he really does come across as being the dean of discipline or the school
Yeah.
bully, really. Anyway, I would
But Jude,
suggest to
by the way,
me,
Jude, before here's the thing. Well, there's a whole lot of things. Like Ireland has a sort of an 80 billion trade
yeah, yeah,
surplus. The Americans, they have a trade surplus or a services surplus.
yeah,
But Micheal is going to be in the strange. But what I wanted to get on to is yesterday, Andrew Neil had a big article, in the Sunday Mail. I know Andrew Neil, who was the biggest Thatcher supporter and
right wing.
absolved Boris Johnson
Mm,
from every wrong.
mm,
Yesterday, he came out and said Trump is an absolute unprincipled charlatan, and we always knew it, but we were giving him a bad ball, but not any longer.
mm.
Jude, when the old Brits are starting, and the Sunday Mail and the Daily Mail, a lot of cages are getting rattled. So, Jude, I would love to know where, and like when you think Carney saying we can no longer trust America, and when you see von der Leyen and all those people who had the big meeting on what was last Wednesday, so she's
Uh,
talking about 800 billion. Dude, there's a world realignment going on in that. A lot of people, that is really, really serious.
it is, and it's kind of scary too. Take us.
Yeah.
I'm going to take it down to just a little final grace note on this thing about going to the White House, or the Fight House, as I like to call it now. Um, little Pengelly will be going, but Michelle O'Neill will not be going. So
Uh,
she'll be there. Do you think, just a starting point, do you think she'll introduce herself, or she'll have her flunkies introduce her as the joint First Minister? Or will she have them introduce her as the Deputy First Minister of Northern
she'll have
Ireland?
them introduced. I'd be pretty certain was Trump appearances everything. So she'll be saying I am the joint first minister in Northern Ireland. Yeah,
Uh,
she'll have about 5 minutes with him, if at all.
uh, I said I felt the same thing too, just to impress on Trump her importance. But actually, I was thinking if she said Deputy First Minister, she's missing a chance because if she said I'm the Deputy First Minister, the first thing Trump's going to say is, "Where the hell is the First Minister then?" And
Yeah,
then Emma
yeah,
Little Pengelly has a chance to say, "Well, she's Sinn Féin and they just don't come." So she missed a chance maybe, or she would miss a chance for wounding Sinn Féin. But anyway, she probably uh, she probably will call herself joint first minister or have.
Look, look at it, I guess. The SDLP are not going. Sinn Féin are not going. Nationalists north of the border are not going to be represented. Do you agree that's a good idea or a bad idea?
Um, yeah, I think it's a good idea. I don't think that Trump actually, I really don't. I don't think that Trump or any other president decides on how much they likes the Irish on St. Paddy's Day, coming in and talking to them for half an hour, 5 minutes. I don't think big policies get made that way. Do you think? Do you?
Yeah.
I mean,
No,
you don't
no.
want to.
But I would hold on. This time last year, and I thought Sinn Féin didn't read the room at all.
That's right.
Their own people didn't like it. Joe
Yeah.
Biden was providing Israel with 2,000 pound bombs or whatever it was to
Mm,
blow away people in tents, and
mm,
they were going over and so on. And they threw some Palestinian leader out of a meeting in Belfast. There was also but anyway, they went this year. They're not going. This whole thing about the Riviera, Gaza as the Riviera, and all the rest of it.
mm.
But I'm a little Pengelly. Like Gaza is not an issue for unionism, but it is for nationalism. Go and explain that to me, Mr. Collins, Dr. Collins.
Well, Pat, you know yourself, Ireland, and certainly I'm sure Sinn Féin would tends to side with the underdog, tends to
Mhm.
side with the persecuted people, because we ourselves in our history were eternally the underdog and the persecuted one,
Yeah.
right up to partition. So it's hard for us not to identify with those. And besides, what Ireland is essentially England's or Britain's last colony, right?
Yeah.
And what's happening in Gaza is the Israelis being colonists,
Yeah.
and dishing out to the natives what they deserve, and they find it a hard time thinking of them even as human, which is I mean, it's so patently bad. Like you don't have to think twice, really. So I'm proud that Sinn Féin would take the line they take, and it goes way back because I remember being at the odd Sinn Féin Ardèche way, nearly 20 years ago now. always, on a couple of occasions I was there, there was always a prominent Palestinian contingent. There were some from other places like the Basque country and so on, but the Palestinians stood out and people talked to them and were very, the sinners were very sort of sympathetic to them and did all that they could to sort of boost their case.
Yeah,
Yeah, the answer is yes, we would. How would you not, Pat? Who the hell would
yeah,
defend Israel in those circumstances? Except,
yeah,
except them. They have no bother doing that.
yeah.
They readily will tell you, "Oh yes, you don't understand. We had to do this." And it comes back to the Golda Meir thing where she said, "We can't."
But shooting, they're forcing us to shoot their children. Jesus, what, in other words,
Yeah.
we hate doing it. This will hurt you more than it'll hurt me, or hurt me
God.
more than it'll hurt you,
God,
type
God.
thing. But Jude, we're getting back to you asked me the question. Tomorrow morning, if you were an advisor and you're heading into the Oval Office with Micheal, and you're one of Michal's advisors, what would you tell him?
I wouldn't tell him anything because he wouldn't listen to me anyway.
But what
He
advice if you
wouldn't.
were?
Well, I would advise him. Here's what I'd say. Micheal, do you believe that what was happening in Gaza was a terrible thing? And I presume he'd say yes. And I'd say, do you also think that people should be reminded of that? Because there's a lot of, Israeli propaganda, which, as we've just said, justifies it. And if he said, yes, I agree with you, then I'd say, well, slide that in somewhere. And no better man to do it. Micheal is a very sort of smiling, agreeable looking man. I've
Yeah,
rarely seen him in a tantrum. So I think
yeah,
he could do it if he wanted to. He could say all the good things about Trump and so on, and he could say about our concern. We're worried about the people of Gaza. They really don't have, so many people have died, and like you, Mr. President, we don't want to see anybody dying on the battlefield, much less civilians.
yeah.
And that'd be good.
Yeah, no, I mean, no, another funny thing, Jude, you just so it came to mind as you're speaking there. Vance was the guy I think that's was the catalyst for the big row with Zelensky.
Yeah.
You're not showing enough respect, and you haven't
Oh,
said thank you for fuck's sake.
that was
Anyway,
after, that was after
yeah,
one of these
but
guys, one of the so-called journalists, said to him why wasn't he wearing a suit?
what about his, so it's the whole thing of America. What does they say? If you elect a clown, expect a circus. Well,
Uh,
that's what the Americans have got. But JD Vance has been apparently, and I'm so delighted to hear he was up in Vermont skiing, and there was a considerable number. It wasn't a small number; quite a considerable crowd came out and saying, "Go ski in Russia." And apparently, he was out there quite recently with his 3-year-old daughter or whatever. And he said he was approached by protesters and he tried to play it as, these people are thugs and all that.
uh,
And someone says, get real. Here's the vice president out with a big coterie of Secret Service guys. And,
yeah.
it's almost as if he's the victim. Because a couple of people passing by told him to go fuck himself type thing. Like Trump and Vance are brilliant at playing this media game. He used an instance where I think a couple of people catcalled him as to saying that this is an assault on the dignity of the office of the
That
vice
was,
president type
yeah.
crap.
Oh
Yeah,
God. Okay, let's go home, Pat, so to speak, and talk about this man called Gold. I've forgotten his first name. Gold,
Thomas,
huh?
Thomas.
Thomas Gold. Thomas Gold is a TD, I gather, and uh, um, he was arrested and then discharged, and it was about his, I don't know, was it his relationship or was it money in connection with a former colleague at work when he used to work for
Yeah,
this logistics firm. Now, I note the report in the Irish Times goes right through his history and ends up telling us that in 2021 he defended former Sinn Féin politician Martin Ferris's support for the Provisional IRA, saying that the outlawed organisation was made up of volunteers who stepped up in their community. What do you think of that? You're a journalist, Pat. You're a former editor. What do
first
you
things
think of
first.
that?
First things first. We don't know what the hell the charge is related to. It's under investigation, so there's nothing you or I can say. I don't know whether he's innocent or guilty.
Hmm.
But when you read that sort of stuff, you sort of go, there's a certain, you know, what would you say, angle being put on it that he defended Martin Ferris and all the rest of it. You know, they say, the Irish Times and the media say every time some Sinn Féin guy, even the least allegation, it's suddenly headline news. Now, Jude, so far, as far as I know, there's zero evidence to corroborate anything. Your man said he has given a detailed chapter and verse to the Gardaí that he is, well, he says he's 100% certain he's done nothing wrong, etc., etc., etc. Now, Jude, I used to hear, as long as there were only allegations, until somebody was charged, you rarely went to. Well, back in our day, you didn't go because you didn't know because you could smear somebody. Like
Mm,
put it against you, and I'm not charged as saying somebody raped somebody and then they're never charged.
mm, mhm.
But you can ruin somebody's life by saying that. So
Yeah.
here's this guy. As far as I know, so far, allegations have been made, which he has vehemently denied. And he's obviously saying there's some sort of motivation behind it, whatever the motivation is. Maybe it's legitimate. Maybe there's all sorts of things going on. Maybe he has a case to answer. I don't know. But the point is, so far, he hasn't been charged.
I agree completely. And in fact, it reminds me of remember the time Jerry Adams was arrested a few days or weeks
5 days
before?
before in a big election, yeah.
He was arrested and discharged a couple of days later with
Yeah.
no proceedings. And we weren't told, according to this report, there's no talk about proceedings being taken against him. Um, they say he was questioned and then discharged, and he says he's innocent. I don't quite get it, but the one thing I do get is the very determination on the part of the Irish Times to link him with events that occurred how many
Yeah,
years ago
yeah,
now?
and that's all.
Half
That's
half
obviously
a century ago. Half a
later.
century
Yeah,
ago, 50 years ago. They're trying to
yeah,
this really it's sort of outrageous. Like Martin
yeah.
Ferris must be what now? He must be well into his 80s. What the
Well,
hell?
it would be late 70s, I would think.
So
Yeah,
this
yeah.
guy would dare to say that he had, that he supported the view that he took. I mean, do they not?
But hold on, another funny thing is I was chatting to him in McCann. What was it?
Uh,
Thursday, and he was telling me he one time he was going over to Liverpool, and he says he was standing in the queue, and he says next thing cops arrested him. He was held in Liverpool jail for 3 days.
hmm,
He says nobody came near him, nobody asked him a question, nobody did anything, and after 3 days he was let out. And he says, to this day, he doesn't know why he was arrested, but because Eamon was the young guy, civil rights movement in Northern Ireland. I was watching a bit on Facebook last week. There
hmm.
were two or three people, pro-Palestinians, and it's actually on video. And this cop came up and said to him, "If you're protesting about Palestine, you will be arrested." And the woman says, "If we were protesting for Israel, is that okay?" He says, "Yeah." So in other words, you know, freedom of speech is becoming a big, big issue with the authorities.
That's right. That's right. And again, it comes back to a thing where what is the normal thing? The normal thing is good living people don't protest. They don't
Yeah,
go out and create bother with people and have to have the cops protecting them and goading their opponents into throwing bottles and
yeah,
stones at them. Uh, there's a terrible. I think people need to be very aware of that. That there are efforts to frame, as you said, to frame people in a particular way, so that without
yeah,
saying it, they're saying,
yeah,
that guy Gould, Martin Ferris, provisional IRA, violence. You
yeah,
know. Anyway,
yeah.
I was listening to Alistair Campbell, Pat. This is something this is like self-inflicting wounds. I was listening to a podcast with American podcast with Alistair Campbell, the Tony Blair's advisor. And one of the things that him and the guy, the American, agreed on was not every, we have to, one thing you have to remember is not everyone is as interested in politics as we are.
Yeah.
Do you think that's true?
Absolutely, Jude. Absolutely.
Would you say that,
You know,
what percentage would you say are no, are totally disinterested?
Jude, I would go nearly go as high as about 75%. I really would.
Do you think that matters?
It does, yeah. It does. Jude, sometimes like there's a guy posted a thing this morning on social media, and he said people complaining about Elon Musk being unelected, you know, had no problem of voting for a woman who or getting a woman who didn't get anybody to vote for her in the primaries, and that on the surface, you know, he was chatting about Kamala Harris,
Mm.
but there's one massive discrepancy there. Elon Musk is actually in government implementing policy. Kamala Harris went before the electorate and didn't get elected and is not implementing policy. So,
Mm.
like, Jude, if you're not interested in politics and you don't have the information to make that decision, on the surface, I wish I could remember the exact way he put it. It was almost like these things are equivalent. No, they're not. There's a massive difference. Kamala Harris stood for election, didn't get elected.
Mm.
Elon Musk has never stood for elected election, but is actually implementing policy that he seems to be making up. There's a massive difference. Yet if people don't know that.
I think people tend to get interested in politics, well, fearful about politics, whenever there's signs of war. At present,
Yeah.
like I think people are a bit disturbed, so they begin to get fearful and think, "Oh God, would that politician be better than that one?" So they veer towards it in a crisis, but otherwise they sort of ignore it. And yet, I'm firmly of the belief that when people have certain political structures around them, they act in certain ways. And if they've other structures around them, they act in different ways. For example, if you were in Trump's America today, you would find that your thinking would be shaped by the fact that Trump was in place. Well, mine would be
Yeah.
anyway. And likewise for Ireland or for England or whatever. The thing that really annoys me is where people say, "I see those bloody politicians. They're all the same, all the same. I wouldn't
Yeah.
waste time with them." You know, does
Yeah.
that?
No, no, there's a couple of people I am sparring partners with on Facebook and on social media. And one guy comes on and he says, all American presidents are the same, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not for buying that. As far as I'm concerned, that's an absolutist or a purist position.
Mm.
Like, I accept totally that a lot of American presidents are simply American presidents and they follow the rule book, you know, singing from
Yeah.
a certain hymn sheet. But let's get this clear. There are some, you know, who are a lot less worse than others. Like, is anybody telling me seriously that Jimmy Carter is as bad as Donald Trump, or that Bill Clinton was as bad as George W. Bush, you know, and so on. Like, there are others Barack Obama was accused of a whole lot of things, but he said, remember in his inaugural address, he said to the Muslim world, he says, if I if I put out my hand of friendship, would you sort of, bite it, or some sort of thing? I can't remember exactly the phrase.
Mm.
And he tried to bring the Muslim or that world into the orbit and
Mm.
so on. And actually, if you read his autobiography, he says Israel has caused a hell of a lot of problems for America. Now, he still stood by Israel, but you have to in America. That's the reality. Like, some people think you can get elected in America, holding Irish political positions. You can't. Dude,
No.
America sees the world in a very different prism than we do.
Oh yeah, yeah, and there's been a shift with our good friend Trump. Um, yeah, there was something I was going to say about that now, and I can't remember what it was, but yeah, yeah. Maybe we're sort of blinkered ourselves, Pat. We are on the looking out for stuff that gives an appearance of being important. Do you think are we
What do you
making the
mean by that? What do you
opposite
mean? What do
fault?
you mean by that? What
Well,
do you mean?
are we seeing politics at every corner of the world? Whereas most people, as you say, 75% of people don't give a shit. Uh, and we're exaggerating it, really. You know, when people
No,
say,
Jude, no,
one of
no.
those three idiots talking
I,
about it
I,
again.
Politics make, Jude, if you work on the basis that politicians are, if you work for a company, the managing director is basically the president. They decide your work life. Politics decides your life outside of work. Like, in America, like, the Social Security is getting raided by Elon Musk. Medicare is getting raided by Elon Musk. If you're an illegal immigrant, you're getting raided by the FBI and all the rest of it. Politics is what provides the structure of your life and the
Yeah.
quality of your life.
Mhm.
And for anybody who says, I'm not interested in politics, they're basically saying, I'm not interested in society and the rules that govern us.
Uh, Speaking of the rules of governance, did you see, and was it, yeah, at the weekend, was it Friday maybe? They had in the Irish Times a report from these polls that they do, North-South polls.
Yeah,
where there
yeah,
was different models being put forward in terms of how the Dáil or whatever parliament was created in the United Ireland
yeah.
might look. Uh, did any of those catch your eye as being particularly worthwhile or particularly useless?
What I called Jude, they were sort of, I can't remember now the details because I read it, I think, on Friday or Thursday. We were talking about,
That's no excuse. You're not allowed to forget stuff.
uh, they were looking at, could what whether it would be the southern model, which is, or the northern model, which, like what a compulsory sort of coalition, a mandatory coalition. And there were all sorts of sort of things put forward. Now, most people in the South do not agree with the Northern one, but the Unionists, as far as I remember, when the Unionists agreed, they wanted a guarantee of 2 seats for
At the cabinet
Unionists
table.
out of the 15. But a lot of people in the North said, wait a minute, two Unionist seats. What about be based on any seats at the cabinet table be based on the different constituencies?
Yeah.
You in other words, why should Unionists, who might be in a minority in the North, have 2 seats when maybe the Nationals, who might be the majority, would have no seats? You know,
Mm, mm. Would you would you agree with me when I thought when I read it, the different models, that the big thing that stood out was they were trying to find ways to accommodate unionism. And I actually
absolutely.
applaud them for that. I applaud them because unionism, even the best of unionists, should there come about in United Ireland, are going to feel uneasy. So I think
Yeah.
it behoves the nationalist and Republican voters and constituency to try to make them as welcome as possible. So the question is how far you go with that. Do
Yeah.
you, as you've just said, do you give them 2 seats at the table? Do you go for a federal system where Stormont would still sit, and you could have a parliament in Dublin, maybe even one in Galway, and even one in Cork? Have you any notion, Pat? We talk a lot about United Ireland. Do you have any model in your head? Not hard and fast, but are you attracted to any particular model?
I think basically the system in the South, you know, everybody just votes. And, and now there should be maybe for a 10, 15, 20 years, there should be some maybe put on a floor for unionists that, and their representation to get them. And then, by the way, everybody thinks unionists are this sort of homogenous group. I think if unionists came along, a lot of them might vote different way. Eamon McCann, let me reflect. Eamon told me a story. We were sitting chatting, and he says a couple
Where did you meet him,
quite a
by
few
the way?
years.
Where did you meet him? I used to be in the class
I
with him.
met him up, and I'm doing an interview with him for the Irish News.
Woo,
So that's,
woo, woo.
yeah. But anyway, but he was telling a story. He was invited up to, there was some sort of post office dispute. They were cutting back post office, and this is some years back. And he said he was invited up to Shankill Road, and he says, to tell you the truth, I was a bit nervous about it. But he says, when I went there, he says, not only, he says, I was warmly welcomed. And he says, there were several women come out in the street and says to him, Mr. McCann, you're very welcome to the Shankill Road. And he says, look, working class people, whether you're Catholic or Protestant, he says, the big divide in life is not men and women, black and white or whatever. He says it's about those who control money and our lives, and those who are the working people who are getting controlled. No, that's not exactly what but that's the point he was making. And
Hmm.
there's so much in life, and there's a United Ireland. We should all have a look how we're governed, by the way we're governed. Now, it seems to me that one man, one vote is still the best form of democracy.
Yeah, yeah, but you see, if you think about the way the DAO operates, it's certainly one
Uh,
man, one vote, or one person, one vote. But there's a whole series of things like if the second count, the third count, the 15th count, and then your votes go into somebody else, and so on. It's quite a complicated
probably
system.
unionists for for a comfort blanket for them at the start. There probably should be some guarantees,
Uh,
at the cabinet table for representation. But somebody, Jude, I wish now you'd mentioned it. Like, I think there's some talk. It was called the territorial model or something like that. And they
yeah.
said there was four. The North has been divided up to sort of four constituencies, and
Hmm.
based on the number of votes, each one of them should have been guaranteed a seat, the cabinet. Maybe the cabinet be increased from maybe 15 to 18 or something like that
mm,
type thing.
mm,
And
mhm,
that this way everybody gets a whether you're Catholic or Protestant, Unionist or
mhm,
Nationalist, you're
mm,
represented. And now the other thing was that the Unionists should have a guarantee of, if I remember correctly, 2 seats and a 15-member cabinet and so on. So
mm,
Jude, all that has to be thrashed out. But as you said on many, many occasions, Jude, if we are going down the road of United Ireland or voting for United Ireland, everybody should know what they're voting for.
mm,
And we should have a citizens' assembly where all these things can be thrashed out and where a majority vote, and unions should be invited in and sort of say, right, this is what the plan is. Do you agree to this or do you agree to that? And it's up to them whether they participate or not then.
yeah. Well, according to the Irish Times, there was unionists who were participating in these kind of mini citizens' assemblies where they
Yeah,
got these notions about what would be acceptable to unionists and what would not be acceptable to them. Yeah, I
yeah,
think your idea, Pat, of a time limit on some model where which would favor unionists or would give them a comfort blanket or whatever, I think that
yeah,
would be a good idea. And then to say, and after that period of 5 or 10 years, we'll look at it again and see, what
yeah,
is this working? Is there better ways we
yeah,
can do it? I think that would be the best attitude. I personally believe that if unionists were in a United Ireland, they would be surprised. It'd be like Eamon McCann being surprised in the Shankill Road. They'd be surprised at the extent to which they found a home and they found colleagues in the South who thought like them. Sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. There'll be plenty of
There's
right-wing people in the South that they can
aye,
cozy up to.
aye. There was a friend of mine who was an REC press officer. And he's a very strange man. I'll not name him because but he used to go south regularly, and he loved going south. This was even during the Troubles. He obviously didn't tell people he was an RUC man,
Mm,
but like, and he told me one day that after the choice came, that he thought he would vote for United Ireland. I
mm,
said, I think when people are sort of because of the Troubles, I think a lot of nationalists were forced to take position. A lot of unionists were forced to take position, not forced, but that sort of
yes, yes,
stay with the
pressure.
tribe, stay within the tribe. But
Hmm.
maybe if those corrals were taken away, people might decide to venture out.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And I'm going to say I had exactly the same experience myself. There was a guy in Jordanstown who would have been Protestant Unionist, and I remember he used to tell me they used to go down on fishing trips down to Kerry, I think it was, and
Yeah,
had been doing it for years. And then the Trouble started, and they had to stop it. And he said they got some of the best hours of his life were spent down there. Just enjoying all the crack and the experience
uh,
of it. Uh, I thought, and sometimes I feel sorry. I mean, I don't mean to be insulting, but sometimes I feel sorry for unionists because somebody said, was it Dennis Bradley said that they're a lonely people.
yeah.
They
They are
they
Jude. They are a lonely people, and you talk them. Hey, let's get this clear, and everybody knows the Brits don't want. The Brits are no more interested. As my brother-in-law, who worked in England for 40 or 50 years, told me one time, he says, "Pat, he says, when we're on the Bolton site, they didn't give a shit whether you were Seamus from Donegal or Sammy from County Down. You were still a Paddy to them." And lets me refrain. Eamon McCann was telling me one more time. What do you call it? He was on a van, transit van. Eamon was, by the way, Eamon McCann. Imagine Eamon McCann, a tree planter and a pruner in London. He worked for the
that's
Greater
right.
London
Yeah,
Council.
he was very
Uh,
interested in
and
that too.
uh,
He told me
well,
when
he said they were traveling in a van, and he says, the loveliest fella. He said, very intelligent. He's big sources. He said, Eamon, remind me again, what part of Ireland do we own? This, and he said that's how least interested they were. Your man, and he said he was up to the speed on all sorts of politics and policies, and he still didn't know which part of Ireland Britain, was ruling
yeah,
type
yeah.
thing. If you'll pardon that expression.
Well, I suppose that comes back to that thing about people not being interested in politics, except you're saying he was into politics, but he wasn't interested in whatever the hell was happening across the Irish Sea.
Uh,
Oh,
uh,
well, sure, we're all lonely people, Pat. We just have to
uh,
cling to each other and try to stumble our way towards oblivion. Would that be a
uh,
reasonable,
exactly.
reasonable picture of
Well,
life? Let's stumble our way through this week and hope we don't end up in oblivion.
uh,
Okay, Pat.
by the way, before you go, isn't there a big meeting this week in Saudi Arabia about you?